I'm going to call the Finance Committee for June 22nd, 2022 to order. Roll call, Mr. Bodkins, Tom Fellner. Ms. Alt is unable to make it due to illness. I'd like a motion to excuse her. Mr. Bodkins makes the motion. I will second. All in favor? Aye. Ms. Alt is excused. Before us, we have the minutes of the May 18th, 2022 regular meeting. If there are no questions or corrections, additions, could I have a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Bodkins makes the motion. I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item, agenda is before us. If there are no corrections, could I have approval to approve the agenda as presented? Mr. Bodkins makes the motion. I will second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. First discussion item, item A is creation of an assistant auditor's position. This is just for discussion purposes only. I had a conversation a while ago with Mr. Satterfield, and he brought up the idea of this position. It's not in the staffing tree, so there would be ordinance required if that position was to be had. It's my understanding that he has a right, if you call it, or authority to create this position, and he just expressed an interest in us having a discussion. He did give me some bullet points about the requirements and duties. However, in a conversation with him today, he said that was going to be changed and it needed to be elaborated. So I don't have any information beyond that. He was not able to make the meeting this evening, so tonight was just the opportunity to introduce the idea of that. Ken, do you have any questions?
Oh, no, we just have to wait, I guess, and see what his recommendations are. Maybe a base jail, whether it's a full-time job
Yes,
or part-time.
Ms. Goey?
He does want it to be full-time, and I'm not sure what the difference is, but Brian did ask me to specify that we have assistant auditor, he would like it to be deputy auditor.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the difference is, but
All right.
he did want that clarification. Basically, and he had also had conversation with the law director. The law director said that he could go ahead and make the appointment, that it doesn't have to be in the staffing, but that is something that we would want to make official. And then, of course, we would need to set up the funding for it. The main things that he wants everybody to think about, look at, would be continuity in the office, just through transition and everything else. A big thing for us would be the cross-training, to have somebody overall that would know all of the jobs and be able to help with that. Also, as far as the transition goes, you know, ideally if the person lived in Gallion, and then, you know, the auditor didn't want to run, then there would be a smooth transition if they wanted to run for auditor themselves. Not saying, you know, that's just a scenario that would help. Also, since we've been out of fiscal emergency, a 3-year plan. I know we always had the 5-year plan from the recovery plan, but a 3-year plan really needs to be developed overall for the city. So that would be another goal that he would like to see accomplished. The workload in our office has increased since we got out of fiscal emergency. The work and stuff that the state used to do is now all on our office. And he just also wants to note that it is a non-union position, so it's fiduciary appointment, which I think maybe you already said. So those were the points that he had discussed with me and asked me to bring up just for you guys to be able to think about.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Item B was my kind of idea, so we're lone wolf on this one. And again, it's nothing specific. I guess what it had to do last council meeting, we voted to use ARPA funds for some retention of the safety forces. And certainly well-deserved and no question about that. It happened to coincide also with the storm that moved through and the kind of above and beyond, I called it, as many of us did with other departments in the city. And so I was just kind of wondering out loud if there was any way to reward them above and beyond what is in the contract. I know that Chief, you can add to this, but I think the fire chief kind of answered some questions from council about how it would affect salary or union contracts and things, and it sounded like it was above and beyond, and of course pay reward is not the word I'm looking for. It was used as retention, but still it was, it seemed like to me that other departments were left out, and I'm not even sure that it's a can of worms that we want to open. So it was just a thought. And I don't know the mechanism by which it could be funded. I don't know if there are ARPA funds available to do this, or if it would come out of I don't know, I thought about how I would maybe reward my own employees with a matching investment from payroll. I don't know, like I said, wasn't specific. I'm thinking out loud. But it all goes back to that 24 hours that, we kind of alluded to it yesterday, Mayor, how the airport was out for, several days. First Energy customers and customers outside the city were suffered long where we did not. There were, some residents that had extended outages, but nothing like the surrounding community was encountered. Anyway, that's all I got on that.
Are we talking about a monetary,
Well, I think it would.
would that a one-time deal, or, to say?
Don't know. That,
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
okay.
I mean,
I don't know.
exactly. I was thinking out loud because it struck me as, I know guys were coming off of are still on a 24 straight hour shift, and that is, maybe some people think, well, that's what is required,
Yeah.
if you work for the city, but that's above and beyond requirements. I used to have a boss that said, your reward is your paycheck, and he wasn't my boss for very long. So anyway, next, yes, sir.
I have just a few reactions to that. First of all, I appreciate the spirit of it. There's an equity issue. I think it's pretty obvious.
I guess that's what I was.
And there we expect to have another allocation through the state of ARPA funds with the same overall lack of restrictions. So it is possible if council chooses to have a similar kind of retention bonus. I think without a whole lot of data and getting into it unduly too much of a detail, we've lost more people outside the city to other employers in the non-service department, or excuse me, in the non-safety forces than we have in the safety forces. Now, we've had people leave in both police and in fire, but a relatively small number have left explicitly or specifically before pay. On the other hand, we've had private employers pick off, quote unquote, a lot of our better equipment operators, and but for the fact that munis don't pay electrical line people what the other co-ops or investor-owned, that we aren't picked off as much there. But you know, I think that's this idea of if we're trying to retain people, the idea of the grant, have some belief that that's the reason that we're doing it, then I think you can make a case that retention of AFSCME workers is just as important to look at. A couple more things. One, I think it's good to get the idea out there. I think it's really a good idea to get the idea out there. There are ARPA funds. They would likely compete against capital funds for utilities or other type projects. So I think, well, if you're going to get $1 million, where else would it go if you decided to do what you're suggesting? I'd wait to see what the safety forces receive in terms of how that will divide up per employee, and then decide what slipper we're gonna size it up for. So I would wait until we find out what, if anything, the safety forces get. In the longer term, and maybe I want to say bigger picture, because that sounds BS-y, but in the longer term, we pay a 3-hour minimum call out. So you get called out on overtime, you get 3 hours, whether you go out and lineman flips a switch, like, hey, I'm done, and back to the house. In these extended areas, these extended storms, one thing that would be worth discussing internally and then perhaps introducing in the negotiation would be a higher rate of OT when you get beyond a certain number of hours. So we don't want to look at that. We not want to cause people, let's say you get time and a half, let's say you get double time after 14 hours. You don't want to have that. This is an ice and snow more than a storm relay. You don't want somebody out there working as many hours as they can and then they get sleepy and you have the kind of the worst sort of thing about being in the ice and snow business. But that's something to look at perhaps. When they're on extended overtime, pay a higher rate. I don't know. I'm sure the union would suggest double time or something, but I'm not sure where that's at, but that's a way to reward standard overtime and kind of that above and beyond special circumstance. Sure. So,
Well, again, this is not the hatching of the eggs.
Right.
Let's see where it goes, get the idea out there, because I think it's worth pursuing. Obviously, there are many, many questions to develop a plan, but so that's all that this item was about.
I really like
it wasn't a sweepstakes of, gosh, this employee was so nice to me at, well, it's not going to be a cash sweepstakes. But I think that recognition and knowing that, again, that kind of an extraordinary circumstance. So
I think that maybe the third or fourth topic at the committee level that's kind of been brought up in this form. Not an ordinance that you have to vote out. We'll have plenty of that, but thinking about some of these issues. I'm all in favor of it. I'm not sure where it all sorts out, but, yeah, I think that makes, the discussion makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you brought it up.
Any questions?
But like this on my mind, you know, a recognition banquet where you would recognize each department, maybe a meal, sit down and have something. But you're right, it's, I'm gonna do this. Maybe we can think about that, but just to say, thanks for the street department, thanks for the tree cutters, thanks for the police, fire, everybody. You have to be there when it's kind of stuff happens.
Sure.
The people are chipping in the public, some mostly anonymously.
Yeah.
Deliver donuts and do all those sorts of things.
Sometimes just a nice thank you is more also required for most people.
I agree with that, Ken, and I would think that the four labor unions, they have an interest in recognizing their members, and that's how, when I've been part of that employee recognition stuff, it was in conjunction with the union, sort of divvied up the costs. So that's something.
Last week we was there and
Yeah.
they stood on their head to thank their employees for doing that.
I agree with all
Oh, my
that.
God.
I agree with that.
Great, they never fail to thank everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
I just kind of want to throw it out there too real quick. We're doing that in the police department. With everything that the officers have been doing with the whole COVID type thing. You know, working extra hours there, sometimes short staffed, different things like that. That was one of the things I wanted to do, was to show appreciation to the employees for everything that they've been going through, and with the change from administration. Because there's been some change and that's not so easily well received, but everybody's been doing a really good job of that. So thinking outside of the contract issue, we partnered with one of the local churches, with Hunter Hickman, with Real Church of the Nazarene. And he was very gracious to want to take that on for the department to show recognition. And just the amount of businesses that were willing to support us, and it's going to be taking place on the 24th from 4 to 6. I just really want to recognize them and thank them for that.
And what form will it take, Chief?
I'm sorry.
What form will the recognition?
It's going to be an appreciation dinner.
Okay.
Yeah, we were looking to maybe do a little bit more with awards and different things like that, but just the timing of it just wasn't there right now. So we're going to progress on that as in the coming years.
And also, you have different shifts, so you can't get everybody together.
Correct.
Okay, you gotta do it twice,
Yes.
somehow.
It's good, that's nice to know.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
All right, next item is Investment Committee Ordinance 2022-49. Rod, I don't know, do you want to comment on this?
I wasn't at the,
Okay.
but, you know, we, Nick Bakari, he recommends what we do with these, investments at, Meter and Associates. And, so I think he's telling us to put this in a nameless commercial paper. And it's got all the recommendations right there. Do you have them? Bonnie?
Yes.
Okay.
One of them is 9 months, and then 3 of them is the 2 to 5 year space that we're looking at, if you look at that piece of legislation.
So we meet twice a year, and these are what we came up. These came up this time. I don't know if I don't think we have too much more coming up the rest of the year. We do. Okay. So, but we're required to do it. The meter picks out what we invest in, and so we don't go, you know, hunting the market, whereas they do all the work. So, so that's what they've done here with the investments.
With the interest rates, the increase, is that going to be positive for us? You know?
Yeah, I assume so. Yeah, the 0.75 that increase should be a positive increase.
So I mean, these are minuscule returns as usual, but in the past we've taken meter investments, you know, at their word. I think they're trustworthy, so
Yeah.
I have really no questions. Eunice, do you have anything to add to any of this?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit, and I don't know if the mayor has anything he wants to chime in. He was at the meeting as well, but things have changed, some since we had our meeting as far as the market goes, but I have been in contact with Nick. Our office has Nick Vicari from Meter. So we just need to, have council approve the action that was recommended by the committee. We do have 6 more investments that will renew yet this year. 5 of them will be in August and 1 in October. We talked at the meeting that we had, they are required to meet twice a year. We usually end up meeting more than that just because Meter can't project out to August and October as to what the market will be like to be able to give us a recommendation. So Brian did ask at the end of this meeting, that the next meeting we'll kind of review our investment policy and see if council wants to make some changes to maybe give the investment committee a little more leeway to make decisions on reinvestments if they're within a certain range, maybe, so that we don't lose time in having to come to council to get approval and stuff on things. So, Mayor, did I word that properly?
Yeah, I was at the meeting and voted. A couple of things that haven't been said. One is this should have been on last council meeting, and I'm not quite sure why.
That was my
The money is sitting uninvested now, and so there's that sense of urgency. If the rates were anything other than kind of puny, I'm sure we lost out on less than hundreds of dollars by not getting them reinvested. But there's an urgency to get this out and on the agenda for next council meeting.
Just a refresher memory, when we picked Meter Associates, in my mind, I thought we didn't have to go to council every time we had rates done. So if you would give it to the investment committee or the treasurer or auditor to invest those and just let you know what we did, because they are picking them out, we're not picking those out. So. I don't know.
The committee meets twice a year?
Twice a year.
We're
required.
We're required to meet twice a year, but we meet more than that.
All right, and so will there be another meeting when these other,
That will be up to you if you change.
Yeah, I think the answer is before these November, there's a handful of them that mature in November towards the end of the year. Yeah, yes, we should. I think the recommendation it isn't stale, it's been there, but it's to balance between very short term and kind of medium term in any sort of rollover. And I watch all that business news and convince myself I understand it. So I've been watching, of course, bond rates, and that'll be an important thing that
This is part of, like $13 million we have with Meter, so.
After we were talking about this a little bit, basically the money's so small, the investment properties, that we're not gonna lose money, but we might not gain a whole lot. Is that correct? That's basically.
It's basically in a checking account, so.
right now, it's just sitting in our overnight.
Okay.
So anyway, sooner we get it earning at least a little bit, I think this is definitely an improvement. And they'll be real, I think, volatile and difficult to predict times over the next few months. So having some flexibility is probably is a good idea. So,
if there are no more comments, I'd like a motion to move ordinance 2022-49 on to full council. Mr. Bodkins makes the motion. I will second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Next discussion item is in regard to the debt ordinance that we passed last council, 2022-43. There is a time constraint, I'm going to ask Ms. Colleen to kind of give us an introduction, and then we'll make our decision tonight.
Okay, thank you, Doc. I haven't been included in all of the conversations that have taken place with this, but Brian and I did have conversation with the law director and Allison Binkley today. With the timeline that we had set out, we need to make a decision tonight as to what the pay down will be. We have to pay down the $10,200 on the screw pump. That is required. So if you're looking at the handout that I gave, that Brian prepared, under Fund 603, he notes that $10,200. These sheets basically lay out the debt with the budget and revenue side of things. And the bottom box, Brian projected what our year-end balances would be. So I know that he has had some conversation with the mayor about possibility of paying down some of the other debt. We need to decide that tonight though, because our bids are due tomorrow at noon. So on Friday, we will be needing to sign a certificate of award. And per the term sheets that we sent out to the banks, we need to let them know what that amount is. The ordinance that you guys passed prior does give authorization to the auditor to sign and decide that pay down, so no further legislation is needed, but we just need guidance to know how much will be paid down and where that's going to come from. We just need to be aware that, for example, if we use 401 funds, that will take council approval down the road. So everybody would need to be on board with that if we need to move that money to cover the revenue that would not be coming in from that debt rollover.
We had in the previous committee last month quite a bit of discussion. We chose to let the ordinance ride as printed, with the idea that this day would come. So, I'm going to, Mr. Mayor, you had a variety of ideas, and I'm asking for your input.
The two areas that as I've thought about it and looked at, that I think we've got to tackle in whole or in part, are and I think the last case, first time I saw this one, but I think that's a useful, when you look at the E and double E, that 405,000-ish, that's for the urban paving, and I think it's a mistake to just roll the notes until we get to a point where we have to begin to retire that over its useful life. A little bit like the screw pump has that requirement. We had to pay some down on that. So that's one area that I think could be handled, and I would suggest if we pay it down, we pay it down with 101 and 201 money. I think this group knows that anything that 201 has, it gets from 101. So when you look at the fund balance, the cash fund balance in 101, I think that's a good candidate, and I'd recommend either 200 or 400,000, either chopping it in half or paying it down in its entirety. So you'll be paying for the notes, and then the ones that are coming due, and then would be another 200,000 or 400,000 on top of that. The other one that is, I don't know quite how to describe it, but it is the D's and that back page, the two pieces of it says Brant Road Improvement Project. Really, that's the Keller Drive Valero Access Point project. That's what that really.
That's infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah. It's the debt on when we built the Keller Drive extension and created the access point for Valero, that little bit of widening on 598. That's what that number is, and I think it's more expensive, obviously, add those two together, but I think we need to look at paying that down. I think that it has been, I don't have it in front of me. Does anyone here know what year we first borrowed that money? You have that, you probably have that in the laptop, don't you guys?
Yeah, I can look that up. You're talking on the.
Yeah, I'm talking about Grant Road Improvement Project. It's kind of, like I said, a little bit mislabeled.
I want to say that was 2016 somewhere, or was it before that? I want to say it was right around.
I don't remember. So anyways, the point would be, it's been longer than we'd like to think, and the hope was in those days, the risk was that we would put it in and that would stimulate more immediate development. That hasn't happened, and I think waiting for some future undefined development to generate the money to pay that down is probably not smart going into, again, uncertain financial times or fiscal times. So I would suggest paying down some of the money that is in 401 appropriated. It's two big chunks. They were the water and sewer portion of the Keller Drive, of the roadway back to the sports complex. So if we're not going to do that this year, I think we should look at tackling some of this debt with a portion of that 401 money. And that's, go ahead.
What do you say? So if I'm just looking at the 2D items,
Yeah.
that's around $700,000.
We ought to chop them. I mean, just like a lumberjack in the woods, I'd chop them both in half this year. I know we have money in 401. It doesn't totally liquidate that, certainly. There is another $350,000 or a little bit more than that will get paid in 23. And like I said, the general fund is at a fairly solvent point. So I think now is as good a time as any. Those would be my recommendations. Tackle the two roadway projects. The 603 I wouldn't want to pay down more debt there. I don't think 603 can quote unquote handle it, and then the other consequence that I think we should guard against is to pay down that. You probably pay it out of the capital improvements fund, and having a little bit there I think is wise. I think paying down some of our debt and then keeping a reserve in kind of a just in case category. That's what I got. So you have 170, when you look at the appropriation in 401, there's 172 that's in there. And I think the understanding with the auditor's office is that is the gap on the Grant Road turn lane. Okay, so there's 172 that's spoken for, if you will, out of that 596. I think that's the right number in 401. Any event, and so I'm suggesting to spend down another 350. So that would leave it in the neighborhood of $100,000 still in that.
So the EEE, you suggesting?
Yeah, chop that in half with general fund and 201, and I would recommend that we try to cut in half the debt that we have out at Keller Drive. And begin to get us on the pathway down. I think what we expect our interest rates almost double, not quite double what so the cost of borrowing is gonna be more this year, right? Anyway, that's what I got, and I think that's a way to pay for it. If Eunice is right, we don't have to pass any legislation. Then we'll proceed with letting Binkley and Brian long distance and Eunice know how much we're gonna recommend spending down or paying down those debts. And council will be aware of it. Yeah, great. Yeah, yep. Thanks. That's what I got. That's the recommendation.
I think it's a good idea. Wish we could pay down more, but that day will come as well.
The old cliche of we should keep a little of this powder dry. There's just a sense of uncertainty out there, and our financial state, as Rod points out at council, is pretty okay, especially in some funds, and we don't want to stay. We want to try to conserve those balances.
Questions, Kenny?
Please, people that are paying this down.
You would think.
We're not in dire straits over this, are we?
Oh, I don't think so at all. I think there's 7 on here, and we haven't. Brian and I believe Ian's probably put this packet together. I'm a little more optimistic about the 101 unexpended cash at the end of the year, but everybody knows I'm Mr. Optimist.
But, and rightfully so with that, Mayor, because that is based on us, number one, getting every penny in revenue that we projected and spending every penny that we budgeted, and we don't.
Yeah, I think we're doing okay on revenue so far, knock on wood, and then the expenses, you're exactly right. We never spend up all the appropriation.
And that's what we base, that bottom box on the first page, that's what we base that on.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, I guess you'd say.
7.5 million. I guess what I'm saying is that we would pay down off of that projected balance 200,000. That's really the fraction of it. All right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Next item, Health Department Fund Establishment, Ordinance 2022-50. Eunice, any info on that?
Jason McBride, the Health Commissioner, is here. I'll defer to him.
Thank you very much.
Yes, this is a grant called EO22, stands for Enhanced Operations Sub-Grant. It's another COVID grant that is through the Ohio Department of Health, and it's for $30,000 to help with personnel costs and contact tracing and helping us get new equipment and related items.
And as I think we've seen in the last 2 years, establishment of a fund, especially in the health department, and either CARES or ARPA in terms of the health department, it's not unusual. So, and it's a way to keep track of the funds with their own fund number instead of putting it into one cash pot. Any questions, comments?
We charge
I'm sorry.
overhead. That's kind of a half a joke.
Okay.
I mean, will you charge the grant overhead?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, will you charge to the grant, any overhead costs, administrative costs?
I'm gonna
I imagine the answer is yes.
Yes, it is. And I also was just gonna clarify, I don't know if we've done this in the past because my memory just isn't there, but this grant runs August of this year through July of next year.
Okay.
So right now we're creating the fund. We're not moving any money at this point. That will probably come at the next meeting. But we just want to have that fund established so that when the money is received, we have a fund to put it into. So we're not playing where we had to before, where we were moving the money back and forth so much. There will be some back and forth because it's reimbursement. So we will advance from the 230 fund and then put it back. But yes, there is, like with the personnel costs and stuff, as you were mentioning there, Mayor, it will cover wages and stuff like that. We just will, that's part of what the transfers back and forth will be later down the road.
I'm just joshing. That's Jason. But you know, about this issue, we gotta get an operating agreement between the health department. So overhead is one of the issues that we're discussing, or we will be discussing. Not that much.
Do you have any questions, comments? If not, I'd like to move a motion to move ordinance 2022-50 out of full council. Mr. Bodkins makes the motion. I will second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Last, under discussion items, we saw a little preview of this about a month or 6 weeks ago regarding the vehicles ordinance. We don't really have an ordinance number.
No, we don't even have an ordinance there, it's not quite right.
Chief, do you want to kind of elaborate, if you could, or?
I'm sorry, what was that for?
I'm sorry, it was
That's
the
for police vehicles
police
that we're talking
vehicles.
about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So we've since received all 3 vehicles. We've had them out to Spider Signs and Graphics, so all the graphics are done. They're currently sitting over at Park Public Safety Equipment in Bucyrus. Don't know what the long term is on that as far as when they'll be upfitted with the emergency electronics. But there was a requirement in the municipal Ford financing agreement that we had to receive all the vehicles, the bill of sale, and there was another document that we had to have. And Ford Municipal Financing had to receive that before we could lock everything in.
Okay.
We've not yet received the bills of sales or the other documents, so that interest rate that was initially presented in the quote's going to go up. We just don't know what that is as of yet. That's on the agenda for tomorrow, first thing in the morning, to get a hold of Ford Municipal Financing and have them re-quote that.
So, will this involve all 3 vehicles or just the last 2?
All 3.
Oh, okay. Because I thought, that was a different.
I thought
Because we received 1 and we had to revise that. I assumed that these would be the last 2, but are they all?
We never got into revised for the first time.
Okay.
We talked about it, and then we realized we had to receive the other one, so.
I see.
That's, yeah.
It's just that this thing kept getting delayed with the supply and all that type of stuff that's going on in the supply chain and documents in the mail. You know, things just aren't coming like they used to as quickly.
We knew about the initial cost of the agreement.
Right.
We haven't had anything else, so that's coming.
so if they were made on a Friday or a Monday.
If we get the information, in time, this could be something that will be on the agenda, we could vote it on Tuesday, so that way it doesn't have to wait. If not, it'll wait until first meeting in July, so.
Okay, so there's nothing really to pass on to council to be voted out of this committee. Any other business? I don't know if this, it's not a finance related thing, but since the hot topic is the vandalism in Heisey Park, I was wondering if, Chief, are you at liberty to share anything since we've got, after being excoriated on Facebook last night, I'm trying to redeem myself here. No, not really. Do you have any anything that you're able to share legally with people that are listening?
I do.
Okay.
So Lieutenant Snotter was the lead investigator on this complaint, and obviously there's other calls for service going on, other investigations that the officers are involved in, calls for service that you can only dedicate a certain period of time to it before other calls come in. But he's been working at it diligently. I think with our relationship with the community, we received some information that was helpful. We also took time to review the security footage on the cameras that the city has installed in the parks. That there's a segment of video that was helpful as well in identifying individuals involved. So essentially what it came down to is it's 4 female juveniles between the ages of 11 and 12 years old that were responsible for the entire amount of damage. So we've met with all the parents and or legal guardians. We were given consent to speak with the children. They were all very truthful and forthcoming with it. There was no inconsistencies in their statements. And we were also able to recover some evidence that was related to the vandalism. So Lieutenant Snotter is in the process of completing his written report, and that's going to be forwarded to the prosecutor's office for review and consultation to go further and decide what's going to happen.
Thank you very much. Terrific. I know
It's a
that's
good thing that the people who were commenting aren't paid to carry a gun, because that was one of the worst fire-ready aims that I've seen in a long time. You know, and we, as a city government, you don't expect to be carried around on the public shoulders, but that's pretty ridiculous. And I think because of some of the people that commented, it'd be hard not to live in this town and know some of those people. I was just at the softball field before I came here, and a woman who was associated with cleaning it up disassociated herself from one of the main commenters. As if like, I was going to get mad at her and retaliate. It's like, this is, will sharpen our game in terms of how we use the cameras. We got to get better at that. We got to get to the point where it's not after the fact, by days or hours. We're going back and searching for something that we got to get better at motion activation and seeing it and reacting while they're on the scene. But it's kind of disheartening, I imagine, for
to say the least.
I think probably for the parents, whatever the situations are, as much as anyone.
Sure.
So I don't want to be unsympathetic with some of the things we may look at that I don't believe we have the authority now in current ordinances. Something to think about is banning these individuals from the park, assuming that they're convicted and they go through the juvie court process until or whenever they're out of probation. So that's something that's assuming that they get in trouble, they don't send them to a DYS or anything crazy or detention. I don't know. But if they don't, if they're back in the community, they should be excluded from the park. And then like 11:30, it's the other thing that didn't get mentioned. It's 11:30 at night. So I don't want to shift all this what's wrong with the city to what's wrong really in the underlying situation. But it was like ridiculous and uncalled for, and I'm joking because you got to, that's what our gang did is above and beyond. You know, everybody knows the grass is growing, we got 100, you know, the staff knows, okay, well, if we don't get out and mow grass, we spend 2 days cleaning this up and getting beat over the head the whole time.
I think I'd like to there was a lot of commentary about what's the city doing to clean this up. It's volunteers out there. Yes, there were volunteers, but there were many, many, many man hours spent out there. You don't just go out there with a bucket of soapy water and wipe that stuff off. You know, they're pressure washing, they're using acid, trying to get that paint off without ruining the equipment, without ruining the $75,000 worth of concrete that we put in 2 years ago. So they're working really, really hard to get that. You know, products are harsh, and it's been 90 degrees. Those guys have been out there for 3 days. So all of the
above and beyond.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, the most offensive. You know, to me, the entire situation is offensive, but the most offensive language and images have all been either covered up or removed. There still is some remaining, you know, C+L and hearts and that kind of stuff or whatever, but that will eventually also get taken care of, but they wanted to get, you know, the most offensive handled first.
Now, this isn't carving
Yeah, it's
initials in
different,
a tree.
Right.
But it's actually more incriminating than this individuals probably realize.
Well-
Hey, and Mark mentioned it, good police work, no doubt about that. But the reason we found out and got on the trail of that these individuals was some citizen came up and let us know about that. So I've had some calls about just profanity and the overall behavior of some of the same age kids, the younger teenagers. We're working on maybe an idea to relocate their favorite place to hang out. You know, not relocate it to Crestline or something. Not relocate it away from that playground area. It's just an invitation, and Mark's guys go down, or Mark Brooklyn go down. You know, if unless somebody is violating the law, when the cops pull up, they're not going to F-bomb them.
Right.
So it all cleans up, and then you really have. So we're going to try to, and in that situation, I think that even though it may be frustrating for the parent who is subjected to that offensive language and behavior, they've got to call us. Even if they came down there, they didn't do anything. You know, just, you got to keep doing your part. So, anyways, it's
Very difficult situation, and Chief, thanks for, you know, city employees stepping up, you know, to do above and beyond. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
I had 5 calls today about this. I don't know how we come up with a 20-foot fence wall with barbed wire and lock it up at night.
I just see it kind of as the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't that way. I think there's a part of us, all of us, that could like go off on kids today and disrespect and all that. That ain't gonna solve anything.
No,
But it is. There was a lot of money spent. I think it's been a good investment. A lot of talk about quality of life last night at the committee meeting and how we actually have it instead of just assert it. And those park assets, they're nice assets that not every community has.
yes.
And bear with me one more second. What's funny is I won't be around, you know, but when these 11 and 12-year-olds become 25 and 26-year-olds, and they're the mother of 3, I wonder if they'll like go look at that, you know, and learn from that, you know, because the heck of it is, and they're likely to stay in the community. I don't even know, I just know their ages, but they're likely to stay in the community.
Yeah.
And that open disrespect for everyone's property, it'll be interesting to see what they teach their kids. So,
I can ask any businessman in town what he puts up with.
yeah,
Same thing.
yeah, I would agree with you. That's what it's costing doing business.
Yep.
Anyways, I don't want to go on, but
Thank you.
It's
I'm going to set the next meeting for July 20th at 7 p.m. May I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Bodkins makes the motion. I will second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
7:54.
7:54.
Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.